Update. Am I the a-hole for exposing my wife's cheating and not wanting to do anything with a child that isn't mine? Original post. 2 weeks ago, I found out that my 5-year-old child isn't biologically mine. I felt deeply hurt and betrayed when I realized that my wife of 6 years, with whom I've been in a relationship for 9 years, cheated on me and got pregnant by another man. Without telling my wife, I decided to take a paternity test. When I got the results, I immediately confronted her. In my anger, I called her a whore and many other names. She started crying and explained that she hid the truth because she didn't want to break our happy family of 3. When I asked her why she cheated on me, she said it happened during a nasty argument we had years ago. She claimed it was just a one-time fling and that she's been loyal to me ever since. She admitted she had doubts about whether I was the father but never took a paternity test. She said she was happy seeing me happy and didn't want to have an abortion for the sake of our family. She also said she didn't tell me the truth to keep the peace. I told her I was divorcing and that I didn't want to be a part of our son's life. She started crying and begged me not to break our family apart. She insisted that I'm still his father and that I've been a wonderful father and husband. She asked me to forgive her and not let DNA destroy our lives. She continued begging, but I left immediately. Afterward, she began blowing up my phone with calls and messages. Initially, I decided not to tell anyone about what had happened, but I became so angry that I told everyone. Now, everyone is furious at my wife. Her parents have said they want nothing to do with her and have cut contact. My sister furiously called my soon-to-be ex and cursed her out. On the other hand, her brother and sister think I humiliated my wife and should have kept this between us instead of making it public. Yesterday, her sister called me and urged me to take my wife back and return to my son. I told her I don't have a son. She got angry, started cursing me and said I'm a weak, pathetic man. She told me no wonder my wife cheated on me and that I'm so insecure and weak that I had to go behind my wife's back to take a paternity test. She accused me of giving up on my son just because we don't share blood and claimed that I'm the reason my wife is now alone and depressed. I hung up on her and instead called her husband to tell him everything. I even told him that her family's full of nut jobs and that maybe he should get a paternity test as well because he shouldn't trust them. He apologized on his wife's behalf and we ended a call. Now, I'm ignoring all calls from my wife and her sister. Now for the top comments before reading the update. Don't let DNA destroy our lives. Oh, it was the DNA that did the destruction. Damn, science. LMAO. Speaking of which, get an STD test. The cheater on the next update. Don't let an STD test destroy our lives. Damn crazy how DNAs just go around ruining marriages and destroying lives like that. Not the a-hole. Yep, those lying, cheating DNAs. The poor kid. Yeah, I really feel for the child here. At 5 years old, he has bonded with his father, who is now going to abandon him because of his mother's actions. That can mess a kid up for life. How do you explain to a 5-year-old why his daddy doesn't love him anymore? More importantly, how does Hopi just stop loving his 5-year-old? Now for the first update. I was absolutely shocked to see 10K comments on my post, and so many DMs when I checked it again yesterday. I'm thankful to everyone who reached out. I couldn't go through all the comments, but I took the time to read many of them. To those asking if I'm okay, I'm not, but I'll survive. Also, why are some people calling me misogynistic and saying I deserve to be cheated on? If your husband came to you and confessed to have a child outside of your marriage, wouldn't you curse him out? This isn't about gender at all. I decided to do the paternity test because my sister kept urging me to. She asked me multiple times, but I brushed it off. I never thought my wife would cheat on me, let alone get pregnant by another man. My sister is my best friend and has always looked out for me. She insisted I do the test because my son didn't look like me at all. I told her he looked like his mom, but she pushed me and I'm glad she did. She was heartbroken seeing me cry and angry at my wife. I must have hugged her for hours, crying, because I truly loved my son. But being around him reminded me of my wife's betrayal, which made the pain worse. After reading comments about how my son is a victim just like me, I decided not to cut him off completely right away because it might mentally scar him. I called my wife and she picked up right away. I told her I was coming over to meet my son. She cried and said she was glad I was coming. I asked her if her sister was still there and she said she was. I told her to make sure her sister didn't speak to me or I'd punch her filthy mouth. She assured me her sister wouldn't interact with me. When my son saw me, he was very happy and hugged me instantly. He asked where I had been, and I picked him up and I told him I had been working. I played with him for an hour and gently explained that I would be away frequently but would still visit and stay in touch. He didn't like the news, so to cheer him up, I told him I'd prepare a surprise for his birthday in December. I'm not sure what yet, but I'll figure it out. After we went outside to play, I talked to my wife. She immediately latched onto me, hugged me, and started crying. She begged me to come back to her and not give up on our family over a mistake. She said she had wanted to abort the pregnancy but didn't because I was happy. She insisted she had been loyal to me ever since. I got even angrier and grabbed her arm, yelling that she destroyed me and our son. I told her that when our son finds out the truth, he won't love her as much as he does now. I said, I came in you every single night. Where did it all go? But a random man comes in you once and you got pregnant? We both know I'm not infertile. I told her I wanted to tell everyone we know the truth. Her friends, her friends' friends, the whole neighborhood, every single member of her family, even those living in China or people she hasn't spoken to in years. I even wanted to tell all her future partners. She started crying and shaking. I told her I wouldn't do it, not because of her, but because it would hurt the innocent child and ruin him. I said, don't misunderstand. I'm doing this for him, not for you. She said I was the love of her life and that she couldn't live without me. She vowed to wait until I calmed down and fight for me. She said she wouldn't let her family break apart over one mistake. She promised to give me as many children as I wanted, that she would get paternity tests for all of them, and started kissing me desperately. I pushed her away and said, you're delusional. You're acting like you've ruined my car or something. I would have forgiven you for anything else, but this is a betrayal to your husband and your own child. I yelled at her sister to get her professional help because she's losing it. Before she could say anything, I left because I wanted her to feel as miserable as possible. After I returned, I texted my wife saying I would visit frequently for my son, but that I'm only thinking about him, nothing else. I told her not to make things worse than they already are, to think about him and to be a good mother. I'm now living with my sister who has been fully supportive. She hugs me until I calm down, even if it takes hours. I'll start divorce proceedings soon. I know I'm his father, so I probably won't escape child support, and even if I do, I feel a moral obligation to be in his life. As for my wife and her sister, screw them both. They're both awful, and maybe it runs in their blood. For her, it's just a mistake. For you, it's years of lying. That's the part that really pisses me off. Calling the biggest betrayal just a mistake. Makes me think she's not contrite and just manipulating to get him back, versus really soaking in the gravity of how big her mistake ruined the lives of the two people she should love the most. Sorry you're going through this. One thing that bothered me about your post is that you said you're not cutting off your son right away. Decide if you're in or out on being a father and act accordingly. It will be worse for the child if you let him become more attached to you and then leave. If he's on the birth certificate, he can't just wash his hands off the child, even if it isn't his. Second update. It's been a month since I found out that my son isn't biologically mine. I've been seeking therapy and I've realized that I love my son deeply, even though he isn't biologically mine. I've always loved him and I always will. In my anger, I called my wife names, which I didn't intend to, but she betrayed me. As for my sister-in-law, she definitely deserved it, because she called me weak and treated me like crap after I found out the truth. After a lot of therapy sessions, I've come to realize that it's better to make peace with everyone and focusing on being in my child's life. I don't know why I keep getting angry messages accusing me of going too far, saying my situation is fake or insisting that I should forgive my wife. I agree that I was angry, but betrayal like this is far worse than just cheating. In any case, I'm posting again because I've truly tried my best. I talked things over with my sister-in-law. Thankfully, she wasn't hostile. We apologized to each other, and while we still don't like each other, we've made peace. I visit my home every few days. My sister-in-law, my wife, and my son still live in the house. I'm tolerating all of this because of my child. I just want a clean divorce from my wife. But I also want to stay in my child's life because I'm the only father he has ever known. Even though he's still young, I don't know how or when to tell him the truth. Every time I visit to spend time with my son, my wife always hugs me. I've stopped pushing her away because it never works. I just let her hug me and vent. She keeps apologizing and saying how sorry she is and how much she wants me back. I always tell her I'm only there for my son. She cries but thankfully doesn't say much in front of him. 3 days ago, when I visited my son, I absolutely adore him. He's always so excited whenever I come to see him. I told my wife that I've hired a lawyer, but only when my son wasn't around. My wife freaked out and begged me not to split our family apart. She said that while my son might not have my DNA, he is still my son and she is still my wife. She insisted that we could make things work, live happily, and that she would give me as many children as I wanted. I left after she vented. I'm still angry at my wife and sister-in-law, but I've been able to control my anger. Her family keeps calling me, telling me I should give my wife another chance and that she'll be a good wife to me. When I refused, they said there's a chance I might not be able to see my son. That scared me. I love my son deeply, even though he isn't mine biologically and he loves me as his father. But what if I'm not allowed to see him? What if they turn the situation against me? That's what I'm worried about. This isn't about me, it's about my child's mental health. I fear they're trying to weaponize the situation and I don't want that to happen. Am I being unfair to myself if I stay with my wife for my son's sake and help him? There are horrible people for using your son as a hostage, to blackmail you into keeping their cheating daughter as your wife. You need to keep those texts and send them to your lawyer. Show them as proof that your wife is not fit to parent a child if she can use the child to blackmail you to do what she wants. My issue right now is not about getting back at my wife, my sister-in-law, or her family. I want to avoid fighting with them. I want them to realize that we can't keep fighting with each other, not for us, but for our son, their grandchild. I'm still angry, but I've decided to approach things peacefully and try to get along with them after my therapy sessions. That said, I hate every one of them, except my wife. I still love her, but I also hate her for her betrayal. I'm going above and beyond for my son. That's my priority. Putting my anger aside, my son doesn't deserve this much pain. He's so young, just 5 years old. I want a clean divorce and to co-parent, but my wife and her family are making everything so difficult for all of us. What kind of mother is she? She doesn't seem to care about our son, she just wants me back. Even if I decided to stay with her, our son would eventually realize that I'm not his biological father and that his parents hate each other. If he weren't so young, I would tell him the truth myself. But right now, there's no way to handle this without my wife agreeing to cooperate. I don't want conflict, but I also think it's unavoidable. I don't really know how to help my son in this situation. You have to fight for him, or you have to back away. This middle-of-the-road approach is how you end up trapped in a loveless marriage, as she's already willing to cheat and getting stepped on by your sister-in-law. Make your choice, but don't stay there with her family knowing that you are basically being forced into a situation like this, and your sister-in-law able to hold him against you. As much as it may hurt OP, he should leave the kid for the kid's sake. I know people will jump at me for saying this, but this is the best option for OP as well as the kid. OP's soon-to-be ex-wife and her family will continue to use the kid as a pawn to drag OP into staying into the relationship. And once OP leaves, she will use the kid to hurt OP. And in doing so, she will end up causing emotional damage to the kid. OP may try to use her blackmailing to get custody, but considering OP left the kid, they might use that against OP to portray him as someone who might leave the kid in the future. Last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my husband's dad and dad's wife that I will not change our daughter's name because it hurts the wife's feelings? My husband, 29 male, has parents who divorced when he was 2. His dad remarried 2 years later to his wife, Sharon. Sharon and my late mother-in-law, who passed away when my husband was 8, were on very bad terms. Sharon has said that my mother-in-law made her life hell, wished her dead, laughed when she suffered 3 back-to-back miscarriages, tried to get CPS to take custody away from father-in-law and her, and attempted to remove her from the picture entirely using CPS. Sharon claims the only reason my husband never called her anything other than Sharon and always saw her as an outsider is because of mother-in-law. However, father-in-law's own siblings have said this is not accurate. They said Sharon and mother-in-law simply disliked each other. While they acknowledged that mother-in-law was dismissive of Sharon's role at times and didn't regard her as an equal in parenting, they said mother-in-law was nowhere near as bad as Sharon and father-in-law claim. When my mother-in-law passed away, my husband's relationship with father-in-law and Sharon deteriorated significantly. He forbade them from attending the funeral, saying that if they tried to come, he would run away until he was placed with other family members. My husband told me this himself. Father-in-law and Sharon said they were afraid he would lash out at them, and since Sharon was pregnant at a time, they gave in. They claim my husband hates them for not being there, but it says that them following through and staying away was one of the better decisions they made. He hates that he had to yell and threaten to run away to stop them from insisting on attending. By the time we met in college, he had very little contact with them. In recent years, there has been slightly more contact, but it's still minimal. He told me the whole story about how rocky their relationship was, and I knew he never planned to be very close to them. Sharon calls my husband her son. She even introduced herself to me as his mom and was shocked that I knew she wasn't. I haven't met her or father-in-law much. I know my husband's extended family far better as he's much closer to them than to father-in-law, Sharon, or his half-siblings. I recently gave birth to our daughter and we named her after my mother-in-law. My husband did not invite father-in-law or Sharon to meet our daughter, but they found out about her name via social media and reached out to him to ask why. A couple of days ago, they approached me at the mall and asked me to talk to them. They told me they had found out about her name and wanted to know why we would do that to Sharon, asking how I could be okay with using my daughter to hurt Sharon's feelings. They said I should insist on changing the name, maybe to something after Sharon, since she has been here all this time, but definitely not a name that would hurt her feelings so much. I told them I would not change my child's name, just because it hurts Sharon's feelings. That's not even a consideration for us. I didn't want to hear more, so I left. However, since then, we've been inundated with texts from them calling me rude and disgusting for dismissing Sharon's feelings. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole, and hand this back to your husband to deal with. He's done a great job of putting them back in their place throughout his life, and this is just one more time. Not the a-hole. He is weighing what he does now, but he thinks cutting all contact is likely the best way forward because they don't bring joy to us. I love your Marie Kondo approach to them, lol. My husband really had that stick with him when he heard it. He said it should apply to relationships too, because if relationships never bring you joy, then you know they aren't good for you.